Hi, and welcome to this new video. In this video, we will look at the SEAGULL ST36 or the ST3600 movement. I will tell you everything you need to know about this movement and give you my thoughts about this movement. So first of all, what is this movement and where does it come from? This type of movement was first produced by Unitas and later by ETA as the 6497 movement, and it was developed as a late pocket watch movement in general. The original layout of the movements by ETA and Unitas are so old that the patents protecting the technology have long been expired, opening the possibility to third parties to produce these movements. So these movements made by SEAGULL are not actually fakes, but are more considered as clones, since they can be freely copied without copyright infringements. But in most cases, you can expect that these movements, for example by SEAGULL, have different tolerances and different qualities of materials used in the production than the original ETA and Unitas movements. There are a couple of different variants of this movement, and the SEAGULL here is produced by the Tianjin SEAGULL Watch Group. This movement is named the ST36 or the ST3600. There is also a ST36K or ST3600K, which is the skeletonized version of the movement. And there is also the ST3620, which is different in the sense that it has the seconds hand at the 6 o'clock position instead of the 9 o'clock position that the ST36 has. This is because the 6497 by ETA was also produced as the 6498 in the same configuration. So these are sister movements who have been built in the same way by SEAGULL and therefore have different names, so the layout is different. This is also something to look out for if you want to build your own watches, so that you watch out for buying the right dials. What are the basic specs of this movement? This movement comes in a 17 jewel configuration, which means that every wheel and the pellet fork and escapement are jeweled. The only thing that is not jeweled in this movement, and this is typical for the era when this watch was designed, is that the barrel has no jewels. You can see this here at the 5 o'clock position. This is just a hole in the base plate and in the barrel bridge. The movement has a standard power reserve of 36 hours, which is sometimes noted as 40 hours. In this case, I cannot really determine where the difference is. I've found both numbers, but for me 36 hours sounds to be right. The movement is relatively big at 36.6 millimeters by 4.6 millimeters. It's relatively slim. It's under 5 millimeters. But 36.6 clearly indicates that this movement was built for a pocket watch, and the 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock positions of the seconds hands also indicate that. This is something you have to look out for, because if you want to build a watch with this movement, this watch is most likely not going to be under 40 millimeters in diameter. The balance works with 21,600 vibrations per hour. When the movements were originally conceived by ETA and Unitas, it came in an 18,000 vibrations per hour configuration, which has since been bumped up to increase the precision of the movement. As I already said, the small second is at the 9 o'clock position, at the opposite of the crown, and in the SEAGULL ST20 version, seconds hand is at the 6 o'clock position. The SEAGULL ST36 is a movement that is widely available on the free market. You can find it on eBay, you can find it on many Chinese websites. There are even watch shops and companies who sell you watchmaking kits where you can build an entire watch who already include these movements. Depending on the source, the different version, the complexity of shipping you have to pay for, prices for these movements can be between $30 and $50. For this movement, I've paid $38 including shipping, which is a pretty good price, but these movements can be had for less money or for more money, depending on where you buy them. The quality should always roughly be the same. I'm actually very happy how this movement turned out. It's very, very clean. It has a very good performance. Although I have found some comments on forums and on the internet that some of these movements have not been oiled before they're been regulated and shipped. So this is something you should look out for if you want to build a watch with this movement, that you check that all of these surfaces that have to be oiled are in fact oiled. If that's not the case, the movement will obviously experience pretty severe wear and probably have a very short life expectancy. Which brings us to the question, how good is this movement really? What I will say is that you get what you pay for. $38 is not very expensive, so expecting chronometer performance, you will have to buy the real thing, which you also can still buy, which is between $250 and $350. But to me, this movement actually looks pretty good, especially for the price. And it's a very fun movement to play around, especially if you want to get into watchmaking and start working on watches. And as I said, I'm very positively surprised about the handling, finish, and accuracy of this movement. Obviously, this movement here right now is brand new, so only time will tell on how well it holds up. And maybe one negative fact about this movement is that it is very difficult to find service parts for this movement individually. It is very easy to buy an entire movement, but it is very difficult to find individual parts to replace them. So servicing this movement is actually simple in the way it is constructed, but if you have single parts that have to be replaced, you probably will always have to buy an entire movement to replace it. But considering the price point and the availability of this movement, this does not hurt very much, but it is not very resourceful. The precision and accuracy of this movement is actually quite surprising. A quick check on the time grapher here gives you some ideas. I've made a separate video going more into depth about the precision characteristics and performance of this movement, so I will not go into depth here on this video. If you want to see that video, you can probably find it, or I already have it linked now, or it's down in the show notes. If the video is not already up, feel free to subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss it. But I have to say that I'm actually surprised how good the quality of this movement is. I expected especially for that price of $38, I expected a performance and quality that was way, way lower than what was delivered. So I'm very positively surprised. So what is my opinion about this movement? If you are a watch brand and you want to sell watches, I as a consumer would expect you to get the ETA version of the movement, just because I would feel more comfortable with it, especially if I pay more money. If you want to build a watch for yourself and mostly for the fun of it, I'd say go for the Seagull. You can't really damage it. And if you do, you can just buy another movement. You can play with it. You can learn basic work on a watch with this movement very, very well. And the mass availability and the size make it easy to handle for someone who wants to get into watchmaking and watch building. This is it for now. I hope you liked this video. Give a thumbs up and subscribe if you liked it and if you want to see more. And I see you in the next video.